What's going on, everybody? I am Paul Patterson. I'm back here with another episode of the Factory Tour with my good friend, Billy Beaman. You've seen him a couple of times. I did that intro in a weird order today, but it's going to be a weird kind of day. Last week, really, of preseason news, and there's all kinds of stuff happening. I'm a little bit disoriented. Billy's here to help me sort it all out. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. Episode 21.
21.
So I have I have a residency on this podcast every 7 episodes. That's how we're going, huh?
Yeah, we're just gonna make that a ritual. We're gonna make that a thing. Like, you're gonna be back here after week
Yeah.
6, I think, of the NFL season, and it's just penciled in. Like, I just write it down. If you get sick, I don't care. You're gonna be here every 7 episodes. I am saving you a spot. So this is what the people want. Okay, they want us here, taking it off the rails, as you say, and just breaking it down.
Absolutely.
We're in sync. We're wearing the same color shirt. I mean, we're ready to rock. So we're going to jump into it. Unfortunately, at the top of the show, I have 2 news items that make me a little bit sad, actually very sad. I don't want to understate this. These are both pretty devastating pieces of news for me. The first one, we really just got some clarity on a couple of hours ago. I had just written in the show sheet updates on Jonathan Taylor ? And we did get updates. And I think in the end, we got the dumbest possible outcome, which is always in play when Jim Irsay is the owner of your team. But basically, with Jonathan Taylor, we were expecting a trade at this point. There's been a ton of smoke that the Dolphins and some other mystery team were looking to trade for Jonathan Taylor. And then he was not traded, and he was also not activated off of the PUP list. So he is going to miss the first 4 games and remain a member of the Colts for the immediate future. And this is a bummer because I really didn't think he was going to hold out. He didn't really hold out. This team sort of forced him to hold out, and I don't know what they gain out of it. Billy, what do you make of this development in the Taylor situation?
Oh, devastation for a couple of my dynasty rosters where I was really leaning on Jonathan Taylor to kind of lead my running back rooms, but it'll all be all right. I'm from a dynasty perspective, I think this is a good buy window if you have the right roster for Jonathan Taylor. From like a real life perspective, like what do I read from it? That Jim Irsay is a maniac. I don't know. Like there's it doesn't really make sense. Like he could have gotten probably. I mean, I'm sure we'll hear in the coming days. He probably could have gotten a fair enough deal, market value probably plus, for Jonathan Taylor. Just wasn't willing to budge. Maybe there's some sort of grudge going on there. Who knows? Who knows? The best you could hope is that he comes back after 4 weeks here, plays for the Colts the rest of the season, and gives you some kind of production this year. Worst case scenario is the guy doesn't play at all this year, and that's not, historically it's not great for running backs, but still I think bright future ahead of him. Not too concerned, but I would have liked to see him on Miami instead of sitting here on the Colts on the PUP list.
Yeah, I was really starting to salivate just thinking about him and that Dolphins offense. And now, we don't even get to see him on the crappy Colts offense. So it's really frustrating. If this is like a spite, like Jim Irsay turned down a 2nd round pick and change out of spite, I mean, I don't really know why you would do that. But it means that this thing could get ugly. We don't know for sure what happens after 4 weeks. We just know he's out for 4 weeks. We don't know when he's actually going to play. Like, is there actually some complication with his ankle surgery? I don't know. Are they just going to keep finding ways to not play him? Is Taylor going to find a way to just sort of miss games with, phantom injuries? We really don't know. The whole thing is a little bit unnerving, but I do agree. In Dynasty, I'm willing to buy. I think it's more likely than not he'll play games this year. And, even if not, the longer he's out, the more his price is going to drop into a palatable range. And he's still 24. He's still a fantastic player. I do think he has a nice long career ahead of him, at least relative to other running backs. So totally willing to buy him in Dynasty. Most of my devastation, it doesn't even come from a Dynasty lens. I have him in a couple of leagues. It's mostly my best ball teams.
Yeah,
I have him on, I think I have 16% Taylor in best ball, which is like double, that's double market exposure. I was scooping him up in the 3rd round, thinking that I had just made fools of everybody else in the draft room, and I was the fool all along. So, that is upsetting. If I can, if he comes on after 4 weeks, it's basically just a matter of like, can I advance those teams and then I'll be fine. But but it's certainly bad news all around on Jonathan Taylor. This is a dynasty show, so we will look for the silver lining, which is that you can maybe buy him. You can flip somebody like, I don't know, Pollard or a Chubb or something, especially if it's a competitive team that's a little bit shallow. Maybe you can get that done more or less one for one, and I think that's a super beneficial trade for you. You're getting younger at the position, getting more talented as well.
I definitely think you have to have the right roster, whether it's you're looking to compete a year from now, or you just have a ton of depth. And you're like, let me just, while I have the chance, buy the dip, So I think it's kind of specific. Like all these things are super league specific and team specific, but there's certain situations I could find myself buying.
Yeah, I think the best case scenario would be a team where you have, enough running backs where you feel like you can get through those 4 games. Maybe you have like a Samaje Perine, a Dalvin Cook. I don't know, some guys that are going to give you some points early in the season, probably to kind of hold you over. But I think he's a buy really in any situation, just because the second he's back on the field, I think you are going to see a nice little value boost. And not that I'm like super into, buying a player and then trying to immediately resell him, but I do think there's a lot of panic when stuff like this happens, and you could get some crazy good deals. I wouldn't be buying him at his previous price of like RB3 overall. But I really do think he could dip into the range of like guys going in the late 4th, early 5th round of startups. And that's the point where like, I don't care what the build is, just get him on my team and then I'll figure it out from there. So
I think I saw, sorry I to cut you off and keep this conversation going, but I saw something on Twitter, a post that was essentially, what wide receiver would you trade straight up for Jonathan Taylor? And I think I think people were taking it like, what would I offer out to go get Jonathan Taylor, essentially? And some of them were like Treylon Burks and Jerry Jeudy, and those obviously you're not going to, like, that's not going to get done, but that's what some people are thinking. So that just shows you how low the value can kind of get in some sort of way, even at least perceived, maybe not realistically, but
Exactly. So you at least want to, look into it and see if there's anybody that's that crazy to want to trade for some unproven injured wide receiver and get rid of Jonathan Taylor. This next piece of news is another one that hits deep. I had a lot of hope for Trey Lance for a long time. I even a couple of months ago, I was still probably misleading many of you on this program, trying to preach the good word of Trey Lance that did not turn out to be too good. And he is now a member of the Dallas Cowboys. So I thought a trade was possible. I thought it was more likely he was just going to sit out the season, eventually end up somewhere else, wash up on a different shore. But he was traded, and it was not to a team looking for a starting quarterback. It was to a team looking for a backup quarterback, which makes sense because I think Trey Lance is probably a backup quarterback at this point. He's just like a young Marcus Mariota, and he is basically a quarterback handcuff. So, that's quite a fall from grace. 12 months ago, 14 months ago, he was a second round startup pick, and now he's a second string quarterback. So you have any Lance shares left, Billy?
I absolutely not. I actually got rid of I got rid of mine really early. I looked at the trade recently. I'm trying to think who the main receiver back was. I think it might have been T. Higgins, who I got back in return for, it was a Devy league, and I traded, it was T. Higgins for sure, but it was Trey Lance. And this was not recent. This was at least 8 months ago, I would say. But I was just out on it. Like, as soon as he kind of lost a starting job, I didn't see it on film. I didn't see anything that I really wanted to have on my dynasty roster anymore. So I got rid of him in like a second round pick or something like that for T. Higgins. And I felt pretty good about that back then. And I feel really good about it today.
Yeah.
It sucks. It sucks for sure for people to get absolutely nothing out of Trey Lance at this point. On Dallas, I mean, you can try to churn up some hope if you want, but I don't really see it ever happening.
I don't think there's really much hope at all. I mean, the hope is that he plays behind Dak, gets a chance to play at some point. Like, I definitely don't want Dak Prescott to get hurt. I have plenty of him in Dynasty, but you're hoping that he gets a chance to show his worth and then maybe gets traded again, or he gets off the end of his rookie deal at the end of next season and he finds his way into a camp battle that he wins. But I mean, it's very, very thin. Like, at this point, he's an end of bench stash. He's a guy that I would roster because I think of all the backup quarterbacks in the NFL now, he probably has the most upside. And I do roster backup quarterbacks. I have deep dynasty benches where I do stash Marcus Mariota or, Taylor Heineke or whoever. So he's worth a roster spot, but he's certainly not worth trading anything of value for at this point. It's like he's started 4 games in his career, which is pretty sure going to go. If that's it for him, that's going to go down as the least ever for a top 5 quarterback pick, I think. So just really unprecedented situation. Obviously, I knew that he wasn't a flawless player. I think most of the people pounding the table for him knew that he was, he needed development. It was just more like, we know he's going to play. We know he's going to play. He's a top 5 pick because that's just how it works. And this time it didn't. He really hit the first percentile outcome on this one. And luckily I only had a couple of shares left. And most of those I don't think either of those I actually did pay full price for. I think one I drafted in like the 8th round of a startup this offseason, which is still like way too high at this point, but not like devastatingly high. Then another one, I think I traded for him for pretty cheap, but still feels bad. And we can all lament what could have been.
Got to be one of the more expensive busts in NFL history, right? Like 3 first-round picks spent to go up and get him. Like that's an impressive failure on all accounts. And I don't know if it's all not his fault, but I don't know if it's all that he couldn't perform. But I also don't think it's all on San Francisco either, development wise. A lot of quarterbacks can play in that system. So yeah, it's not looking good.
Yeah. I mean, we're never going to fully know, how that all shook out, but I think it's fair to say he's probably not good. Like the 49ers had every incentive to make that work out. I mean, they look like absolute buffoons at this point.
Yeah.
They gave up the farm. I mean, it is the biggest draft blunder of all time, because I mean, you hardly have any deals where teams give up 3 first-round picks for a player. And of all the times that's happened, I don't think it's ever gone this poorly. I mean, Robert Griffin comes to mind, but he at least won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Like that was injuries exclusively. Yeah. So I mean, this is like that, but like exponentially worse. So it's embarrassing. I don't really know how, John Lynch keeps his job after that, but I guess hitting on Brock Purdy really, really covered up a lot of that.
Yeah.
Bad blood there.
It helps when your team can still play at a high level. So
yeah. Kyle Shanahan doing a lot of the heavy lifting on that one, I think. But yeah, it's a bummer. Pour one out for Trey Lance. Maybe we'll see him play again. Maybe we won't. Who knows? Sam Darnold is now a very interesting dynasty asset as well. I was stashing him in tons of leagues, even while I was still spreading the good word of Trey Lance, I was secretly putting some Sam Darnold in my bomb shelters just in case. And I do have a good amount of Darnold. I mean, that's like super interesting. You have Purdy coming off of this elbow injury, and now Darnold's the clear backup. If he starts games with this cast of weapons in this offense, he's going to be so startable. Like I don't even think you have to think about it. You can totally put him in your super flex.
There's a world where he plays better than Brock Purdy. I mean, he was every bit of the prospect Brock Purdy was coming out. Right. No, like, I mean, I know we're far from it, but it's, if you're just looking at these two guys in terms of what they are, it's not hard to kind of get there if you want to. Not that anybody wants to, but yeah, I mean, it was funny. I remember talking on Dynasty Underdog, like when they signed Sam Darnold, and I said it then. I was like, again, he's every bit as talented as any of these guys. He was a top pick, so there's no reason that he can't do something here. So yeah, that's a great stash, a great player to have on your roster for sure. I wouldn't go out like seeking him, but as a guy to like, you can get tossed in on trades maybe as something that you weren't targeting but can get in there. Like those are valuable pieces, I think.
Yeah, and it'll be harder to do now that he's the backup. But it's the kind of thing, you want to look out for opportunities like that where there is uncertainty and you can see a scenario playing out where, you really do win out in the end. Like Sam Darnold was, 25th, 26th round startup pick this offseason. Like he was on waivers in leagues. And you just have to be able to kind of see the path. Like Nick Mullins has performed in this system. CJ Beathard's performed in this system. So you just have to.
This is sounding a lot worse for Trey Lance by the minute, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, it's real bad. It is real bad. There is no There is no sugarcoating it at this point. There's no, hey, maybe he will be the week 1 starter. It's over. It's done. So we don't have to pretend that he's better than Sam Darnold anymore.
I feel like I'm beating up on it now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for the guy, but I feel
too.
more bad for me. So it
Do
is
you
what
think?
it is.
Sorry to go here, but just more like on the dynasty theory side of things with a player like this, because coming out he was unproven, didn't play a lot of games. I mean, everything was really just a dream. It was all kind of made up. None of it was reality. It was all what the NFL organization GM spent on this player. That kind of sold us, right? Would you do that again in the future if a similar player were to come out like Trey Lance? Would you buy him again?
I would do it all over again. Yeah. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, because first of all, like, I don't really think we know much of anything about quarterback evaluation. I genuinely think like draft capital is like the number one thing by a mile that we should be looking at. And not only that in terms of predicting performance, but predicting value. It's an incredible insulator. Like Trey Lance had literally, like I said, the first percentile outcome to his career. It could not have gone worse for him to be stuck as a backup all of his rookie year, come in his second year, play one bad game in terrible weather, break his ankle, and never be heard from again. And he maintained so much dynasty value. Like he literally did nothing as a rookie and was a second round startup pick the next year. Breaks his ankle, was a second round startup pick again, like by the end of the year, or a third round at least. Like you had so much time to get out. And I didn't even get all the way out because, and that's really what I would adjust, is just like seeing the warning signs earlier, but I would not shy away from making the same bet again, because I really think what happened with Lance is like an outlier. I don't think we could have predicted it going this poorly, where he didn't even get a chance to play. And I really think that there was a lot of time where you could have figured it out like you did. You got out and you didn't really lose much. Like you got to get the free look on a guy who could have been, a top 5 overall startup pick if everything worked out. Perfect offense, super mobile. You got to hold on to that and sell without missing out, without losing much value at all.
I like that self-evaluation of getting out maybe earlier, seeing the warning signs in the middle, because I do agree. I do think, like you said, the value insulation, it's so great. There's really no reason to kind of avoid that that type of player in the future, because the upside also is there. So yeah, I'm totally on board.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at it with Richardson right now, right? Like this is a guy who does not have any pedigree to speak of. I mean, he genuinely couldn't throw in college. I mean, it was bad stats wise. Worse than Lance stats wise. I know he played in a real conference and not in whatever conference Lance was in, Power 5 or whatever. But I mean, he's not a good prospect in terms of his passing profile. He's not even that great of a rushing profile, but we all see the athleticism. We see the we see the potential, and we see the draft capital. And I genuinely think that the market's not scared. Like Anthony Richardson's going ahead of Deshaun Watson in startups. He's going ahead of
nearly a first round. He's nearly a first round pick.
So clearly the market,
it's ridiculous.
The market's not shying away, and so I don't think we're going to see any less value insulation from these guys. So I'm going to keep swinging, because when these guys do hit, and they hit, and they become Lamar Jackson, they become Justin Fields, who is another guy that actually hasn't hit, but he's a top 10 startup pick for some reason. There's just so much upside there. So I'm going to keep swinging. I got really lucky, honestly. I had so many Lance shares, but once he got hurt last year, I had a bunch of teams where I was trying to compete, and I ended up dealing him for like 80% of his original value on almost all of those teams, just because I was like really trying to pull together a competitive roster. And in the end, like I thought I was going to be regretting that at some point. And in the end, I really lucked out.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I just want to say, on the quarterback evaluation from a film perspective, I don't know. I don't want to say like I'm a film bro, but I guess I am. But I will tell you, even the best of them probably can't evaluate QBs that well. Like there's just so much more than on the field play. There's so much more cerebral going on that I think it's too difficult to know kind of what every decision and where every decision is kind of coming from, whether it's a coaching decision, whether it was predetermined, whatever it was. The other positions, it's a lot more singular. You're looking at a lot more, I think, specific skill sets that you aren't guessing on. So I just think from that perspective,
the coaching, the play calling, the offensive line, what are the receivers doing? Are they in the right place at the right time? Like there are so many things that go into why a play looks weird. And so I totally agree. Obviously I don't really mess around with film much at all, but I definitely think trying to pinpoint quarterback hits just on, how they look on film is like a fool's errand. It isn't going to work. And I think that the NFL teams that are meeting with these players, seeing how their minds work, I think they're going to have a better chance of
Sure.
finding those guys. And so that's why I try to defer to them. Unless it's John Lynch, obviously. But
Damn.
whatever.
I like to bet on elite trades and high draft capital, and sometimes that ends up in Trey Lance, I guess. But a lot of times you end up in really good quarterbacks. So that's where I go with it.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to some other preseason news. We've spent 15 minutes talking about this end of bench quarterback.
I think that it's good in theory to think about kind of what to do in the future with those guys.
It's all good stuff. Really good stuff. There are a lot of lessons to be learned and a lot of bad lessons we don't want to overlearn as well. So I think that was we handled it well. We're going to touch on a couple of small preseason notes, but I do want to ask you the same question I asked my last two guests, which is just how do you handle the NFL preseason? Just the information overload we're waiting with basically no news for 6 months. And then we want to just totally react to everything that we hear. So how do you kind of stay balanced at that time?
Yeah, that's really challenging. I feel like if you haven't been kind of ingrained and like really focused on the NFL for a couple years, then it's probably harder to discern, and you might want to just like not make any moves, not react at all to it. That's honestly general rule of thumb. But if you're tied in and you have your finger on the pulse, I think you can kind of discern what is absolute nonsense and kind of some of the real news. Like if you have access to like The Athletic and you can read some of these guys who are really covering the teams, talking to the coaches in depth, and you can get a bunch of quotes and kind of see who these players are and kind of what they're doing. I think you can get a better idea of what kind of success they're having within the camp and whatnot, and you can maybe react in really minor ways. But there's probably not too much actionable information you're going to get out of that anyway. It probably can only confirm whatever your biases are in some way. But I think that there are some bits and pieces of information. Always the only stuff I'll focus on is coming from like coaches or players. But outside of that, I mean, it's probably best not to react.
Yeah, I've heard similar stuff from my last two guests as well that are like, you're better off underreacting than overreacting, and you need to be very careful about how you read into stuff. And some things are more predictive than other things. I do think, we're getting clarity on backup running back situations. That's something that you can really learn a lot from in the preseason. You look at who's running with the starters. I think that there's some relevance there. You don't want to get caught up in like highlight reel plays. You don't want to get caught up in too much of the positive comments, because every coach, like Chris said last week, every coach wants to talk up their players. Every player wants to say nice things about their teammates. You have to be careful when it's like, oh my gosh, Michael Wilson is, he's crushing Cardinals camp. It's like, okay, this team has nothing going for them. Like that. This is the saddest franchise in the NFL right now. Like, obviously they want some kind of good vibes around a young player. But we can also look at like, okay, well, he's running with the starters in the preseason games and he's not getting any targets. So like, should we be that excited? Probably not. So you have to kind of balance those things. Look out for negative comments too, was one thing Chris called out, because those are so much more infrequent. There's incentive, like I said, to say nice things. So when you hear bad things, you really would want to pay attention to that. And it is usually a bad sign. But yeah, I think that's really all there is to it. And then just try to find people you trust. Hopefully people like us that can try to sort through it and figure out what matters. But obviously we don't get it all right either. And so that's why I try to avoid too much speculation.
I definitely agree with not speculating. I think the stuff I'm looking for, and that's a good point, not really speculating. I mean, the guys that we know about, like, what are we looking for, right? Like if we're hearing good things about Zay Flowers, like you kind of expect that, right? The stuff I'm catching is like Demario Douglas out of Patriots camp, right?
Yeah.
you hear just constant buzz about him week after week after week, right? It's not just one. You hear constant buzz. And if you're not in the know, you're probably not hearing that much about Demario Douglas. But if you're kind of, in the Twitter spaces and you have your finger on the pulse, like I said, you're going to catch those guys. And those are the ones where you're living on the edge, but in fantasy and dynasty you're trying to find those edges. And I think that, that's what you're looking for in terms of camp news is like really consistent stuff about guys who maybe you didn't expect or, stuff like that.
I actually do want to kind of walk back what I said. You actually should speculate when the price is low. You should speculate, like I speculatively added Sam Darnold in a bunch of leagues. I also speculatively added Malik Davis in a ton of leagues. And guess what? I can drop him. That's fine. He got cut.
Sure.
He's maybe getting on the practice squad for the Cowboys. He's not their backup running back, whatever. It didn't cost me anything except for a roster spot for a couple of weeks. So you can absolutely speculate when it's a guy off the waivers or it's a guy getting thrown into a trade. That's where you can pay off big. Maybe you added James Robinson after some buzz in his rookie season, before the season starts. That can really pay off. But you don't want to take players where either we have a track record of them being, not so great, and it's like, oh my gosh, everybody says they're having a great camp.
The Kadarius Toney.
Or a player we really know is good.
Sure.
Who is maybe struggling a little bit, or they have a bad preseason game or whatever. Like, there's some bad things being said right now about Deshaun Watson in the Browns offense. It's not nothing because he is in a new system and he hasn't really played at a high level in a little while. But overall, like, I'm still defaulting to my priors, which is like, we have 4 years of this guy being an elite quarterback, and he's still in the prime of his age, career. So you just don't want to overreact when the price is high, and you could maybe make some decisions that you'll regret.
Yep. No, I agree with all that.
All right. We got some injury news here. Jerry Jeudy is probably the most high profile injury of the past week. Suffered a hamstring injury during the preseason game. Either way, he's going to be out for a couple weeks. He did avoid the IR, the short-term IR. So that's a bit of a positive signal. No clarity at all whether he'll play week 1. If I had to guess right now, I would say no. He'd probably miss at least week 1. And, I've been high on Jeudy as a potential breakout this year. A lot of his peripherals last year looked pretty good, and he was really held back by the inefficient offense overall. This certainly doesn't preclude him from having a strong season, but where he's been going, in seasonal drafts, creeping up in dynasty, this is a little bit of a blow because he's really getting to a point where you were counting on him taking that next step, and now to come out of the gate with a hamstring injury, which is known to be kind of a recurring thing. Not good vibes.
No, I can't disagree with any of that as much as I've been right on the Jeudy train as well. We've talked about this before, I think. Yeah. And I'm well invested in dynasty, well invested in best ball. So yeah, it's a blow for sure. All you can hope is that, you got to just hope for the breakout that he comes back within the first, 2-3 weeks and we don't see it reoccur. That's the best you can hope for, really, because like you said, we do see, we see them reoccur, or we see them overcompensate and have an injury, somewhere else in minor, whether it's like a calf or something like that. So, you don't know, but he rides the bench until he plays again. That's it.
Yep. And now, as the best target earner in that offense, losing Jeudy for a couple weeks obviously gives a little bit of a bump to the rest of the players in that offense. But I think none more so than Marvin Mims, who we actually discussed here. We talked about Jeudy versus Mims, who's the best value in dynasty. We did that on the mailbag show, and we kind of agreed that we liked both of their prices. At this point, you'd have to give the nod to Mims being this incredibly cheap player to pick up. Now he gets to start the season. He was already starting in 3 wide receiver sets. Now he could potentially be the wide receiver 2 to start the season. It's pretty exciting, for a guy whose prospect profile I did like. He went in the second round. He's going to have a lot of opportunity early. So if there is any silver lining to the injury, it's that we can see Marvin Mims maybe find out a little bit more about what he is early on. Are you excited to see him play?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for him to solidify some kind of role. Even when Jeudy comes back, then maybe he just has a bigger role. Maybe Courtland Sutton takes another step back, just, older and broken. And it's more Marvin Mims and Jerry Jeudy. You know what I mean? And also, you got to give your boy Dulcich a shout. I know that it's not looked great for him, but he's got to see a lot more action with Jeudy off the field for a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. I totally agree. We're going to talk a little bit more about Dulcich when we get to the predictions portion of this show.
Oh,
I had
oh
to throw
boy.
one in. I had to throw
I
one
didn't
in
even
there
look there
just for
yet.
you.
Okay.
So we will
Great.
definitely come back to him. But I did want to touch on Mims because I think he has a
Wow.
great opportunity out in front of him now. Sutton as well. He's performed pretty well with Judy out of the lineup. Judy really seems to kind of neutralize him as a weapon, but when Judy's been out, he's been able to earn some targets and put up some fantasy points. So if you have him in Dynasty, he's probably not your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. He's probably down the bench a little bit, but this maybe you have a little flex appeal early on, and that's a good thing. The only other thing I'll mention just real quick, because it's Broncos news, is that Alberto was traded. He is now on the Eagles. It looked like he was cut, and then like 5 minutes later, they're like, actually, they traded him. It was like a round 6, round 7 swap. As an Eagles fan, I think that's awesome. Like, I always kind of liked Alberto. He's super athletic, like Dallas Goedert. They're kind of similar, like size, speed, specimens. We didn't really have a backup tight end at all. So I think that's a pretty cool, cheap pickup, and it makes Alberto a pretty appealing dynasty stash. I've had him on some teams where I just was too lazy to drop him, and now I guess I won't. I'll just keep him because he's kind of looks like the Dallas Goedert handcuff.
Yep, I really like that. We were just talking about that right before we hopped on. I think it's interesting. He's super athletic. He was showing out in preseason, and yeah, the Dallas Goedert handcuff. You can't hate it.
Yeah, and I don't even think we have that much like evidence that he's not good. He was blocked by Noah Fant. He popped in all the efficiency stuff, and then
Yeah,
really
he just
it
never
seemed
played.
like it was just like Nathaniel Hackett didn't like him. Like, I don't know, because when he left, the other coach, the interim coach, was like, hey, this guy's good, like, why didn't we play him more? And then he had a couple of decent games. I think he was actually like a top 5 or 6 tight end the last week of the season or something. So there was definitely something there. I think the guy can play, and I think the fact that the Eagles traded for him is a good sign. We tend to trade for guys that can play. So I'm into that.
He's like the best backup tight end you guys have had since Dallas Goedert was the backup tight end, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, our backups have been like Jack Stoll, who's like, okay, who's that?
Yeah.
And then Tyree Jackson, a former quarterback turned tight end.
The crossover.
So,
yeah. I remember that.
It's been something. All right, before we move on to the predictions, I'm very excited about the predictions. Are there any other preseason observations that you'd like to throw out there?
I mean, I just think the running backs have looked incredible. Like Deuce Vaughn, you see Malik Davis gets cut. Like there were so many podcasts I heard, like Fantasy Footballers, Dynasty podcast. They were trashing Deuce Vaughn like 2.5 weeks ago. They're like 160, never gonna play, and I'm like, stop. Like, did you watch the kid? Like, he can play, and then Malik Davis gets cut. So I think Deuce Vaughn, he obviously played himself into a roster spot, and I think into a role where he could have some flex appeal this season, I think. But Tank Bigsby, obviously, you can call him a handcuff, but he probably has he's probably more than a handcuff, probably has standalone value. And Tyjae Spears too, man. I think he's probably the one that hasn't been talked about at all until the very last minute here, since we saw him in that last preseason game. But he's probably one of the more important handcuffs to kind of keep your eye on or to go after. And I don't know. I think he could be worth trying to move maybe a future second or something for. I know that's I just think that he could have on the right team, on a contender. I think he could have some value for you in the next year or two here, especially if Derrick Henry goes down, which is always possible, as we know.
Yeah, I think Spears really flew under the radar as just a really sneaky good running back pickup. I probably wouldn't trade a second for him, but I do like the idea of trying to get him on some teams. And I do think he definitely has that contingent upside.
Nobody's taking a third though, so it's like, how do you?
No, I mean, you'd have to
maybe some other way. Yeah,
you'd have to work him into a bigger deal. For me, it would just be like, well, I guess I missed on that running back, and I'll find a different one.
I mean, I probably agree more with you than not, to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, I get the thought. I mean, he reminds me of Alexander Madison at this point, right? Like, not a super imposing athlete, like just kind of a do-it-all player who finds himself behind a workhorse running back. And there's not really any other depth there. So he's probably going to get a lot of the touches if something happens to Derrick Henry. There's not going to be standalone value. He's not necessarily going to be the most exciting running back in the league if he becomes a starter, but I think he will be competent. And he definitely does have some explosiveness as he showed in the preseason. So it is exciting. Tank Bigsby, obviously, I'm super hyped for him. He was my most drafted rookie. I'm really happy how things are working out for him. But Travis Etienne is not dead yet. I think he's gonna have a great season, to be honest with you. Can't get with you on the Deuce Vaughn stuff. I mean, I get it. Like, it's good he made the team. He made the team.
It's okay. I get it.
For special teams purposes primarily, and I think he'll get his 2 touches a game on offense, but I don't think he's gonna have a role per se. I think
so.
He's
you think Tony Pollard has what, like 400 touches, and Rico Dowdle has like what? 20? Like, what you really think Rico Dowdle's about to, like?
I think Rico Dowdle
has to touch this ball.
Yeah, Rico Dowdle. I think whatever. I mean, let's say they have 350 or 400. I don't know, 450 running back touches. I think Pollard probably gets close to 300 of those. I think Dowdle probably gets 120, 125, and Deuce Vaughn gets like 30 touches. I don't. Dowdle fits into the Zeke.
Much different split, but whatever. Not
Dowdle,
on the back end, not with Pollard.
Yeah.
Pollard probably gets close to that. Yeah.
I just think Dowdle fits pretty clearly into like the Zeke role, where he's like more of a bigger player, and he does the things that they maybe don't want Pollard to do, or they want to give him a break and like let Dowdle kind of grind it out. Deuce Vaughn is just like a change of pace, kind of like get him in there to be explosive. But I mean, Pollard's incredibly explosive, good receiver. Like, Deuce Vaughn just does the things that Tony Pollard does, but like smaller. I don't know.
You just don't like good players. I don't know what it is. Like, I get I think
he'll have a role like Jamal Agnew had a role in the Jaguars offense last year. I don't think you're ever going to play him. But if you picked him in the 18th round in best ball, like maybe he'll have a good week in week 17 and win you some money. I don't know.
When he wins me one of these tournaments, I'm gonna be laughing.
My take on the backfield is that they're gonna try to sneak Malik Davis onto the practice squad, and that Malik Davis, I think Malik Davis is the secret Tony Pollard handcuff, and that if Tony Pollard gets hurt, they'll activate Malik Davis and he will get most of the Pollard role, and Dowdle will just continue to play the Zeke role, and Deuce Vaughn will continue to play the not role in the offense.
I agree with you on that first part. I just wildly disagree with you on Dowdle's role, essentially. Like, not that he's not going to play somewhat of that role, but I think that is going to be split between those two a lot more. As well.
I'm rooting for Vaughn. I mean, he's a good story. He's a good story.
Arguing about like a bench player you may play once in your life, but anyway,
it's what we do. The people love it.
What I will say though about Tyjae Spears is you do have the added benefit is that he can only tear one ACL. He has one fewer ACL to tear than everybody else. So there,
Tyjae Spears, yeah.
If you're looking for for reasons,
who knew the lack of ACL would actually be the on the pros list. So that's pretty cool.
You ever see Rookie of the Year movie where all of a sudden you can throw amazing? Oh my God, yeah, you're too young. All right, let's move on. Jesus. Just age myself.
I will say while we're on the topic of backup running backs, Keontae Ingram is really, really set up right now. He is all alone in that backfield. I don't know that he's a bad player. I think he's probably just he's a competent, not exciting player. Like, he had a perfectly fine prospect profile. He went day 3, whatever. Like, tons of running backs go with day 3. That he's a plug and play guy. The only running back behind him is a UDFA who sucks, like has a horrible prospect profile. I think he's a really interesting contingent pick to have on your bench.
Sure.
Like, rather than trading for Tyjae Spears at this point, like his value's too high, I would much rather just try to get Keontae Ingram for a 5th or a 4th or whatever. I really like that.
Fab. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a much better way to get a backup on your team, but it's like, oof, that is gross. But yeah, sure.
It's gross. It's gross. But when he's putting 12, 13 points in your flex in week 10 because James Conner, rolled his ankle, you'll be thanking me. So
fair enough.
Let's get on to the actual show, which is we're 40 minutes in. Let's get to the actual main segment of the show, which is predictions for the 2023 season. I'm going to put bold predictions in the title of the episode, so we have to get to them at some point. Basically here, Billy and I both have 3 predictions for the season that are going to level up in terms of their boldness, their hotness. We're going to start out with something that we think is like very tame, like pretty tame, like pretty likely to happen. Then on to something that's like a little bit more exciting, still very much within the realm of possibility, but bolder, and then finish with something that's like not likely, but we see the possibility. So we're gonna ramp it up as we go. Billy, I'm gonna let you go first. You have like maybe the most boring prediction I've ever seen. Uh, so why don't you?
Mild,
Oh, yeah.
mild.
When I said mild, I didn't mean like drink a bottle of ranch dressing on camera. Like this is as mild as it gets. But let's hear it. I'm excited to talk about it.
Damn. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, this is I'm not really like the hot take guy, so this is stepping outside of my comfort zone, which is probably why this is so cold of a take. But I don't think that many people have this take. Hayden Hurst is going to be a top 2 target on the Panthers. I mean, I know it's gross, but
there you go.
Tell me I'm wrong. You tell me I'm wrong. I don't even think I need to explain it.
I'm not going to say you're wrong. I think it's very plausible. I just like, I don't know, live a little, man. Like you get 3 predictions and you picked Hayden Hurst for one. It's like you got the genie out of the bottle and you're like, yeah, can I get like I don't know, like a medium pizza with pepperoni, like as your first wish? And it's like, wait, you could literally wish for whatever you want.
I told you I had to dip my toe in the pool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I needed to just warm up a little bit.
But I do like this take because Adam Thielen was like the worst wide receiver in the NFL last year. He was like basically dead last in targets per outrun or yards per outrun. He was like under 1, which is egregiously bad. Like he is completely washed.
Purposely bad.
DJ Chark does like one thing kind of good, and he's already hurt. He was like the worst wide receiver that Matt Harmon charted last year in his reception perception. So we have 2 of the worst wide receivers in the NFL starting. And then we have Jonathan Mingo, who was a pretty bad college prospect, factoring in as the 3rd receiver. Terrace Marshall is hurt. Laviska Shenault is Laviska Shenault. Like obviously there's opportunity here. And I would not be surprised at all if Hayden Hurst is just there to kind of soak it up, ho-hum. Like Zach Ertz last year on the Cardinals, just getting 10, 11 targets a game, for 6 yards a catch and falling down on the spot. Like I really would not be surprised if that's how it works.
Except he's a lot cheaper than Zach Ertz. A lot cheaper.
Well,
like
not now.
And that's that. I mean, even now, like I don't think anybody wants Hayden Hurst on their team, especially if they're not contending. So, I mean, like, what are you going to have to move? Like a third? I mean, a 4th? Like maybe a 3rd? I probably wouldn't move a 3rd.
I wouldn't move a 3rd, but yeah, I think you could.
No, I wouldn't either.
No, he's very gettable. And I will admit something to you. I mean, I roasted your take, but I do have 12% Hayden Hurst on underdog. So
because he's free, like
yeah,
him and Hunter Henry. No, Hunter Henry. Like,
I have 1% Adam Thielen. I drafted Adam Thielen one time. I think actually, you know what? Hold on, that might be a false memory.
So
I have 0% Adam Thielen.
That was a nightmare.
I was thinking of Alan Lazard because they're the same guy. I drafted Alan Lazard on one team because he fell 35 picks past ADP, and I was like, I guess I already have Aaron Rodgers.
I was about to say you have the stack. I had to, yeah. Of course.
But Thielen is so bad. So I think that's a good call. And Hunter Henry as well is not related to this, but you said his name. He is also a great pickup in that range as well. Yes. He's set in it. He's also in a terrible wide receiver room, and he can just ho-hum, do his thing. Mike Gesicki like fell off the map completely. I don't know what his deal is, but
he injured his shoulder. He dislocated his shoulder in practice, but also he was having kind of a very mediocre camp. So
he dislocated his role in the offense. So yeah,
I love coming on here with you. It's great.
All right, I got my prediction here. My first one is I think it's pretty mild. It's a little bit less mild than that, which is that DJ Moore will finish outside the top 30 wide receivers in points per game. So I have a whole like rationale for this, but I'd like to hear your thoughts just off the top.
I don't love it for my DJ Moore shares, but but I could see it. I guess this is I mean, I feel like to be outside the top 30 wide receivers, Justin Fields has to not be great. So I think how you feel about Justin Fields, but that's part of the take. I feel like.
I mean, I think most of the evidence that we've seen to this point would suggest that Justin Fields is not that great. I hope that he is good, and I hope that all the people that picked him in the top 10 picks of dynasty startups, I hope for their sake that he's good. But I mean, since college, there's really been like no evidence at all that he's good. He's been really, really bad in the NFL, and the argument has been supporting cast, and fair enough. Like it has been rough, but this is really the year to put it all together. The thing is, even if he's fine, like even if Fields is just okay, I still think that this probably happens because I was just looking at the numbers, and when you try to like dig into an actual projection and not just say like, oh, it's the next Hurts AJ Brown, but you actually look at like what it would take. It's a lot, like compared to last year. If you increase Justin Fields pass attempts by 20% from last year, which is like that's a pretty hefty jump.
That's significant.
Yeah, and then you give DJ Moore a career high 28.5% target share, which is like just a touch above his career high, which is like a super high target share. It's like top 10 target share. That's still going to give him like 120 targets, like and that's like, I'm really turning up the dials, right? And that's 120 targets. If you give him those targets and you look at DJ Moore's career catch rate and you look at Justin Fields' completion percentage, like even if you bump his completion percentage up a little, you're talking like 80 catches for 1050 and 5 touchdowns. That's 12 and a half points per game. And there were 32 wide receivers last year that had 13 points per game or higher. So even if you make Fields better, I still think this happens. Like the only way this works out is if Fields is like way better, like really like becomes a genuinely above average quarterback, and DJ Moore has like a really efficient season and scores more than 6 touchdowns, which he's done one time in his career. So I think this is pretty likely, and I think people are really optimistic about Moore without a lot of actual substantial reason behind it.
I actually think I buy this one too. I have been doing the projections, and I did do the Bears, and I have them for actually less than like everything you said, like around 70 catches, under 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns.
Yeah,
I can't like that's 112 targets, like 25% target share. Like I'm not even really jipping the guy. It's just Fields isn't that good.
Yeah, I think people really are not understanding how run heavy they were last year and how unprecedented it would be to make the kind of jump that people are talking about.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the Eagles, right? Like the Eagles were as a passing offense before last year, where we're hoping the Bears get this year. Like they were at like 29 pass attempts per game in 2021. The Bears were at 20. Justin Fields had under 22 pass attempts per game. So for him to get up to like 29, 30, that's a jump that we just don't see. And again, even with that jump, DJ Moore is not AJ Brown. Justin Fields probably isn't Jalen Hurts. Like it's just, I don't think that it's going to go that well. I do take some in best ball because you can still get those big games. And if they're in the right moments, it's fine. But in seasonal, like managed leagues, I have no excitement about DJ Moore. So I got rid of most of my shares in Dynasty. I was out the second he went to Chicago. I did a video for it for DFF. That was my plant your flag. And I haven't changed my mind since. I just think great player, but really, really bad situation.
Yeah. And I added like, I think and I did it in a standardized way. I forgot exactly how I did it at the time, but I added it. I just looked, it was nearly like 100 more pass attempts, if not more. And that's, and still like you can't really, there's not as much volume to go around as you'd think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah. But if you go on fantasy Twitter, it's like, oh, but dude can ball. All the Bears.
He certainly
fans.
can.
Yeah.
I mean, DJ Moore certainly can. I don't know about Justin Fields.
Unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to be enough for him. But yeah, that's my first one. DJ Moore outside the top 30. Okay. Let's turn up the heat a little bit and let's move on to our second round. I do like this one. So go ahead.
This one I think I'm turning up the heat. I'm gonna go with touches. Actually, it's funny. I had this on here for like a week now, and I listened to JJ Zachariason or Zachariason, however you say his name. I listened to his pod, and he had a bold predictions episode and said something similar. I think it was points per game. So I'm gonna go with touches. But Zach Charbonnet finishes the season with more touches than Ken Walker, and that's rushing attempts and receptions. So yeah,
touches.
That's how I feel.
I think our audience knows what touches are.
Clarifying my hot take.
I like that. That is hot for sure. And so you're living a little, and I appreciate that. Sure. I think points per game is like more foreseeable for me than touches.
Sure.
it's not definitely not impossible. Why don't you lay out the case? Like, what's the path to this happening?
Yeah, I think both are very comparable runners, right? So I think that there's it's going to be very hard for Pete Carroll to keep both these guys off the field from a rushing standpoint. So I see them have, and obviously I think Ken Walker is the more explosive runner, and he has seniority, so he's probably going to get the lion's share of the touches. Now that lion's share, I don't know necessarily what that's going to be. I could see it being split a lot more evenly as the season goes on, and I can see Charbonnet having almost all of the receiving work. So I think from that perspective alone, you could see him edging it out from a touch perspective, just because he's going to, be playing a side of the ball that Walker, rarely will see. I think just from that perspective, that's why I can see, just in my mind, Charbonnet, I could see him, having similar amount of rushes, maybe 6 to Walker's 10 or something like that, or just some of that ratio, right? 8 to his 12 or 13 or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And then he's going to work in some passing work as well. And I think as the season goes on, you could see an injury, but even if not, I don't think it would take an injury. I think it would just take them realizing, wow, Charbonnet is just a really well-rounded back. It's going to be hard to keep him off the field, and we need to get him out there more often than not.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that it's plausible. I think there is a little bit of a sentiment that Kenneth Walker is, already like an elite player. And I think that is a mistake.
Yeah.
He flashed some really great traits last year, but he also was like not good in success rate. And he was like a super inconsistent rusher. And he obviously he adds nothing in the receiving game. So there's definitely weaknesses there. They went out and they added Charbonnet, not for no reason. Like Matt was on a couple weeks ago talking about how great he is as a pass blocker. He's obviously a better receiver as well. So I do think it's possible they just kind of lean into the more reliable player. In a median outcome, I think Walker probably has, 20, 30% more carries overall. And then Charbonnet makes up a little bit of that in receiving, and Walker probably leads them. But I totally see the path there. And I like Charbonnet. I think he's been a good value in rookie drafts. I was kind of hesitant at first because I felt like it was kind of a low upside situation. But as I kind of looked more into it, I sort of warmed up to the same stuff that you're thinking. Like maybe he can just sort of carve out his own role, or, if he's good enough, he's going to get the touches. So I do like him a lot, and I like the prediction.
What do you got for yours? Number 2.
All right. I'm ready here. I hope this one's hot enough. I don't know for sure, but I tried to add a little more oomph to it. At first it was just Lamar Jackson finishes as the overall QB1. And then I thought, well, he's the QB4 by ADP. That's not that spicy. So I'm going to say Lamar finishes as the overall QB1, and it's not particularly close. 2 full points per game ahead of the next quarterback.
I love this.
What do you think?
I love this one. Oh, I love this one. I am so invested in this offense and Lamar. I'm dead ass, especially not so much in Dynasty. I'm invested in Mark Andrews. Like I have probably like 60% Mark Andrews in my Dynasty leagues, maybe more than that.
You're honestly a little invested then, yeah.
A little invested, but I also best ball. Like I have ton of stacks with Lamar and team just in company. So yeah, I would really love this to happen. Really love this to happen. I also can see it. I mean, he's been incredible before. We've seen him have an amazing season, similar to kind of what you're talking about. And why can't he do it when he gets finally the offense that we've all been hoping for, right? Some of the best weapons he's had his whole entire career, a healthy J.K. Dobbins, Todd Monken, the whole 9 yards. I mean, yeah. How can you not see it?
Yeah, you're kind of stealing my thunder here a little bit, but I'll allow it.
Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, they have a new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, not breaking any news there. But all the reports are not only that they want to pass more, they're going to pass more aggressively, but also that they're going to play fast. That has been a repeated refrain. They're going to play fast. That's huge. Okay. Compared to the Greg Roman offense, this thing could be night and day. And now, like you said, we have the best weapons that Lamar has ever had. He has Andrews still. We have Bateman coming back, who has been efficient in a small sample. Certainly not a proven talent, but a great prospect who has flashed some big games. Zay Flowers, a first-round pick at wide receiver, and Odell Beckham, who I think reports that of his demise are a little overstated. We'll see the recovery from the ACL, but he was actually not bad with the Rams prior to that injury. He was still earning targets at a decent clip. And so when you look at him as potentially, the fourth receiving weapon in that offense, plus you get Dobbins back healthy, who's been really, really efficient. I think has a little bit of ability in the passing game that they haven't necessarily exploited yet. There's just everything is here for Lamar. And as a rusher, I mean, you look at his rushing yards per game for his career, it's like 20 yards per game ahead of the next best quarterback. Like he is on another level as a rusher. And so if you add in, that passing volume, overall plays as well, the sky's truly the limit. Like he could, not likely, but he could break his own record that he set in 2019 when he won the MVP. It's possible.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And I know he hasn't lived up to those expectations he set in that electric season, but I really do think he's been hampered by an offensive coordinator, by injuries. I think there's been a lot that he's had to overcome.
By Demarcus Robinson being his wide receiver one for most of the season.
Yeah, it's kind of been a joke up until this point. And, not to get hung up on OBJ or anything, because I'm not like an OBJ truther, but just understating a little bit how good he was. He was on his way to being a Super Bowl MVP until he injured his knee in that game. I mean, he was an absolute stud, and no idea if that's who he's going to be, but I'm sure he's going to be a version of that. And like you said, if he's going to be the second, third, potentially fourth option, that's great.
Even if he's the worst receiving weapon on the field, like last year, they had Devin Duvernay and Demarcus Robinson on the field at the same time with Gus Edwards. Like this is orders of magnitude better in terms of, route running, getting open and all that. So I'm very excited. And I forgot I was going to do like dynasty implications of these predictions, and we haven't done that at all. Hayden Hurst. Well, I'm just going to go back real quick, summarize. Hayden Hurst, doesn't matter what he does this year. He's not going to have any dynasty value. So whatever. Looking at DJ Moore, I think he has a lot of room to fall. I mean,
wow. Sideswipe my take. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, he's not going to rise. Like, it's not going to have huge implications. Absolutely. He could be a nice piece for you, this year, like a cheap buy, like you said. But I think with DJ Moore, if this transpires, he's outside the top 30. I think we finally see that little bubble that he's lived in as a dynasty asset burst. And he falls down into that, round 8, round 9 range with the Christian Kirks of the world. That's what I foresee for him in his near future. So if he's still holding that like 5th, 6th round startup value in your league, speaking to you, the listener, go trade him. Like seriously, just get him off your team. Like I really don't care what you have to do. Get Jordan Addison, get Quentin Johnston, trade down for like a Rashad Bateman and pick up a plus because he's going to be right next to him in startup value 6 months from now. Just something like that.
No way. That would be terrifying.
Well, when Lamar's the overall QB1 and Rashad Bateman's his leading receiver, I mean.
No. Zay Flowers. Oh my goodness. You want to get into a fight? No, I like the other ones better though. I like trading DJ Moore for Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, something like that. Like I really, really love those moves actually. And I do have a share that I might go try to do that with. I like that.
Best of luck to you. No, I think Zay Flowers has every chance to be the 1A in the offense. But I'm not leaving Bateman for dead yet. And I do think he has the potential to not necessarily be, wide receiver 1 or anything, but to kind of show us what we were hoping to see, what we were robbed of last year when he injured himself. We'll see. He's supposed to be healthy now, so I'm excited.
The cult of Lance and the cult of Bateman.
Open your third eye. Imagine what is possible. Billy, hit us with your hottest take.
Yeah, I maybe I just want this to happen, but I think this is pretty hot. Jahmyr Gibbs, finishes more points per game than Bijan Robinson year 1.
Your hot take delivery needs a little bit of work.
I told you this is outside my comfort zone. You want me to redeliver it?
Say it with more feeling.
All right, Jahmyr Gibbs scores more points per game than Bijan Robinson year 1.
Love it. Fantastic.
I feel like a player profile video, or player profiler video, or whatever. One of those hot take videos they send out.
Yeah, you're doing it. This is how you hit the big time in this industry. You say outlandish things with conviction. No, it's not outlandish. I think this is obviously a bold take with Bijan being, basically the RB2 in ADP, Gibbs floating around, I think like 12, 13, 14, somewhere around there. He's
Yep.
he's in like the late third, early fourth round. So there is quite a gap between them. But I don't think that this is impossible. I actually love this. I almost picked Gibbs before I saw that you had already written him down. I was going to do something like
Oh wow.
Gibbs beats Alvin Kamara's rookie receiving line or something, where Kamara had 81 catches, and I was going to like say he could beat that or something. But it's kind of along the same lines, right? Because that's the path for Gibbs. He's going to have to really make some noise in the receiving game in order to do this. But I absolutely believe he has the talent. So what is it you foresee? Like, is this a combination of like Bijan potentially stumbling and Gibbs being better than we think? Is it just all about Gibbs smashing? Like, is this like a Gibbs overall RB1 take? How does this shake out in your fictional world or hypothetical world?
Because it is a fictional world, right? Yeah, I think it would take a little bit of Bijan not hitting his ceiling year one, probably, and potentially hampered by Arthur Smith just not willing to throw the ball enough. Now, I don't know how much you can ignore Bijan's talent and not pass him the ball. So I think he's going to get a ton of passes, but people talking about him getting 80 receptions, not targets. They're talking about receptions, I've heard, is just outlandish in my opinion. I think he's going to be much closer to like the 60 range. And if he gets closer to like the 40-50 range, I think this is where we see Jahmyr Gibbs potentially edging him out in points per game, because I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to see 90 targets easily. And he's going to catch 60, 70. And from that perspective alone, if he can do that, while Bijan is more in that 40-50 range, I think that his explosiveness on the ground is going to get him there. I don't know if they can keep him off the field as much as they want to put David Montgomery on the field. I just don't know if they're going to be able to keep Jahmyr off the field.
Well, I love that. I mean, I totally agree with Gibbs, from the talent standpoint. And I think he will pretty easily out receive Bijan this year. It's just whether he can make up that gap in terms of the carries, potentially the touchdowns if he doesn't get a lot of the goal line work. I think Bijan, you could pretty comfortably pencil in for double-digit touchdowns without a lot of imagination. And I think he's going to get like 300 carries minimum. So I certainly think like in most worlds, he is going to outscore Gibbs just by virtue of all the volume he's going to get. But there is a path here. We know that receiving is king in fantasy. And if Gibbs were to pull this off, I don't necessarily think he would jump Bijan in Dynasty. I think as long as it's close between them, I think Bijan would still maintain the edge just because he's been thought of as this legendary player. But the gap would close for sure. And you'd probably see Gibbs, in that early second round of startups as your definitive Dynasty RB2. And that would be pretty exciting, where he was going earlier in the offseason in the late third, early fourth, and then creeping up steadily into that top five. You could really see him cement himself as the Dynasty RB2, especially with, Hall's injuries still kind of hampering him a little bit. Dalvin Cook coming in. I think Gibbs at this point should be the favorite to be in that RB2 chair by season's end.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at I feel like you'd have to give Bijan more than 12% target share, at least a 15% target share, to even get him to like 60, 70 targets. Like, I just don't know how he's going to get, I'm just concerned with this offense, how they're going to pass the ball as much as we want them to get everybody involved. That's where I'm at, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think volume is going to be a concern. I don't think they're going to be as low as last year. You look at the games with Ritter, probably the games with Ritter, they were at like 28, 29 attempts per game. I think 30 is probably like about as high as they'll go. But yeah, like you said, he's going to need a double-digit target share to really get into any kind of meaningful targets. And you still have Drake London there, still have Kyle Pitts. So there are a couple. I mean, other than those three, there's like nobody that deserves to receive a target at any time. Maybe Algier occasionally, maybe a deep bomb to Mac Hollins every now and again. But really, it's just those three guys. So you could see it really consolidate around them. But I think asking for anything more than like a 13 or 14% target share is probably a little bit
Yeah.
ambitious.
If that's the case, I think they're going to be very close at the end of the day, and then I think he has a really good chance of doing it if he's more successful on the ground than we expect him to be. It's probably what it'll take too. In terms of Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean.
Yeah, and I think this is just like try to get Jahmyr Gibbs. It was better to do it earlier, but he is still somewhat gettable, and I do think you're eventually going to miss that window. Now is obviously not the right time to do it, but I would much rather have Jahmyr Gibbs than Jonathan Taylor in Dynasty at this point. And I did just call Jonathan Taylor a buy, but if maybe you could flip Jonathan Taylor and something inconsequential, trade Jonathan Taylor and Evan Hull to the Jahmyr Gibbs owner and just like be like, see, you have a starter until Taylor gets back, and then you get Gibbs.
I have a Jonathan Taylor share that I really need to get rid of. That is interesting. I need to figure out a way if I can add something and him.
Yeah.
I might try to trade Marquise Brown and Jonathan Taylor for Gibbs something.
Because there's a psychological element where when a player is perceived to be in a buy low moment and then you get an offer, even if it's not actually like a buy low offer, you think you're like getting a deal. You know what I mean? And so you could send this offer like, yeah, I'm kind of worried about Taylor. Like I'll trade down to Jahmyr Gibbs and I'll even throw this in, for your trouble. Maybe it gets done with the right manager. And it's something I would definitely explore.
Oh yeah. I'm trying that after this. Okay.
You have some homework. You got 2 different trades you got to go do. All right. My final prediction here. And this is a hot one. I admit right now, this is like full on ghost peppers. This is like, you really have to imagine it, maybe do some like deep meditation, maybe go to the Aaron Rodgers darkness retreat or something to really see this one take shape. But Greg Dulcich finishes as a top 5 tight end in fantasy football.
Did he go and break Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, and everybody else's legs? Like, yeah, I don't know, man. This one's tough to see. I think that you'd have to have Jerry Jeudy be hampered all year long, and you'd have to just see this guy absolutely explode onto the scene. Like we've seen some of these other guys that just all of a sudden come out and you're like, wait, they're that good. So yeah, I don't see it from him. I don't really think he has like all the skills personally, just like, I don't think he moves like that to be able to do it all consistently. So I don't see it, but I love the conviction, man. I hope so. I just drafted him in a redraft league. So if he does, it'll be great.
To be clear, like this is at the absolute like periphery of my, possibilities. But I wanted to pick something that I absolutely think could happen. But not something that I think, is likely at all to happen. But I also had to throw Greg Dulcich in there. I had to get at least one player in to mess with Billy, and I didn't want to do like a Kyler Murray prediction. So I had to do Dulcich.
So how do you see this happening then?
Yeah, I am absolutely going to get there. I just wanted to say like the vibes are bad right now. I admit that the preseason vibes are bad because Adam Troutman is running, a bunch of plays and doing nothing, obviously, because he's Adam Troutman, but he's keeping Dulcich off the field sometimes. But I did some digging. I went back in time to the year 2013 when Sean Payton was coaching the New Orleans Saints, and Jimmy Graham finished as the overall tight end 1 in fantasy with 19 points per game. Now, here's the thing about Jimmy Graham's tight end 1 season. He played just 67% of the offensive snaps that year because Sean Payton has a history of utilizing a receiving only tight end and then mixing in his blocking tight end, right? He kind of has his quote unquote joker player, which he's referred to Dulcich as. So I don't really think the snap argument holds a lot of weight for me. Like I think he envisions what Dulcich's role is, and I don't think that him subbing out for run plays is really going to hurt him all that much. And I'm not suggesting he's Jimmy Graham or that he's going to be the tight end 1 overall. 19 points per game is outrageous. But what I am saying is that there's a precedent for a player getting this type of usage and putting up fantasy points in a Sean Payton offense. And you look at the landscape of the offense now. Judy is hurt. Like I said, hamstrings can linger. Tim Patrick is out for the season. We don't know if Marvin Mims is anything. Like, he could be terrible. I'm excited for him, but he's a rookie. We don't know if he's good. So I just think they might need Dulcich early in the season, like really, really need him. And I think that he's good personally. And if he shows out a couple weeks, his role is not going to get smaller. Like it's just going to grow. And so that's where I see the path. And you would definitely need other tight ends to just not perform that highly. But I already think Hawkinson is a risk to bust. I think Kittle could get not enough, in that offense, not enough targets. Travis Kelce's 34 years old. You never know. Goddard's in a crowded offense. So like, I do think that there's some vulnerability at the top of the position. And I think Dulcich does have the chance. You're telling me there's a chance. It's a very small chance, but I do think it exists.
I appreciate you not mentioning Mark Andrews' name in any of those bust scenarios.
No, he's top 5. He's top 5 full send.
Locked in. Yeah, no, I do actually, when you kind of break it down that way, you can see it. You could see it happen. It's a stretch, but you could see it. But that's why it's a hot take. That's why it's really hot, spicy as hell.
You really gotta squint. It's like a ship that's just about to disappear over the horizon, but it's there. All
right. Well, I hope it ends better than the Trey Lance.
Yeah. Well, at least we've never been burned before betting on an athletic Broncos tight end. Am I right?
No.
I can't wait for next year when Greg Dulcich gets traded to the Eagles for a conditional 7th round pick or whatever. I really do think Greg Dulcich is good. And I don't think he'll be a top 5 tight end, but I think that he'll probably outscore his current ADP because he's really fallen, especially like on underdog, like tight end 20. And I think he's a real nice buy low in Dynasty right now. I'm still like, I'm in on the talent. And so I don't really, like I said, I don't really care too much about this preseason deployment. And he's just falling like a rock. I'd say he's comfortably behind Mayer and Laporta at this point. Like you might be able to swap Musgrave straight up for Dulcich, and I would just rather have Dulcich. Like we've already seen him actually do something.
Easily, that 100%. I would rather have Mayer over Dulcich, but outside of that, I'd be probably with you to swap any of the other the rookie tight end. And probably not Dalton Kincaid, because why would you need? You don't need to do that.
No, so you don't need to. You definitely don't. You don't need to do that. You can keep Kincaid, but yeah, Musgrave is really creeping up there. Chigakonkwo is getting a little bit more buzz recently because they like have no other tight ends on the team. But I definitely think Dulcich is a better player.
I trade Chig straight up too. I would do that.
So I think there's a window there. So those are our predictions. I hope they were hot enough for you. Especially the Hayden Hurst one.
Paul's mad at me.
I'm not
hot enough. Apparently.
No, I'm not mad at you at all. I thought they were so just perfectly Billy that I loved them. So they were great.
Great.
And we always have fun on this show. I have had a blast. We did a nice little, we had some little shouting matches back and forth, but all in good fun, obviously. I did have some like honorable mentions here, but I didn't really flesh them out at all. I was just like typing down like, oh, here's some players I could have takes on. So I just wrote, this is all I wrote, something negative about Najee. That's all I got. So what? So we'll just throw that out there. What do you think about Najee Harris this year? Are you buying into any Jaylen Warren? You're excited about him?
I like Jaylen Warren, especially at his price before. I mean, he was super easy to acquire, so I do have a good bit of him. But I don't like I'm so wishy-washy with Najee because I think he's like a good player. He's obviously not a bad player, and he's on an offense that improved their offensive line, second-year quarterback, great talent all around him. It's like it should be fine. Like he should be really good. He's going to get a lot of volume unless he gets injured. So it's like I can see a path where he's serviceable, but I think what it is that he's approaching a place where he doesn't really have the upside of other players. I've been listening to a lot of like legendary upside, and you kind of think to like how he thinks about things in terms of how can they get there to like what I really, really want them to be, where it's like, we're talking about Bijan Robinson, those 60, 70 catches, whatever. And I don't know if with Jaylen Warren and with all the weapons, he can get there anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I understand kind of something negative about Najee, but I think he's a good enough player where he can still provide really good fantasy production. But maybe the cost is too much though. Maybe that's
yeah. I think in the end why I steered away from it is because it is mostly an upside issue.
Yeah,
like you said, I think too often players, when you buy a player and you think about what their cost is, you're thinking that there's too much of like, okay, is he likely to pay off of this exact cost? And not enough thought of like, how does he greatly exceed this cost? I think it's like Najee Harris is like, if somebody gives you a $10 gift card to Dunkin' Donuts, like you get $10 at Dunkin' Donuts, like no matter what. But there's no world where you then get like $500 to Dunkin' Donuts. And what I'm saying is like, you should.
I mean, that's why you run the pod, dude. Like, holy shit. Yeah, I mean, your point's well stated, well taken, for sure.
There needs to be, because there's obviously worlds where he doesn't pay off his cost. So there has to be on the other side of the scale, he has to be able to out exceed it. And I don't think he has that in him. You said he's, quote, obviously a good player. I don't know that that's true. Like
see, now we're being disingenuous. I think he's a good running back.
I'm not being disingenuous. I think he is. Okay, it depends.
You're saying Keontae Ingram is a good running back.
I didn't say he's good. Okay. We have to define our terms. Is David Montgomery a good running back?
Yes, I think David Montgomery is a good
then
running
Najee
back.
Harris is a good running back, if that's the definition.
Yes.
He doesn't add value to a team, in my opinion. He breaks tackles. Okay. If you look at like any other metric, So I mean, I think he's fine. He can handle.
He's not Saquon Barkley. Like he's not. There's like a vast difference between what Saquon Barkley does and what he does. He's not offering that upside on any given play.
Yeah,
like he's probably not even breaking that touchdown that Jaylen Warren, that 64-yard touchdown. Like he might do that once this year, and like might, if you're lucky, and that's if the guy behind him tore his hamstring on the way.
If everybody else falls down, yeah.
So no, I think your point's well taken for sure. I had a bonus one, by the way.
Oh, good. Let's hear it.
JSN ends the season as a wide receiver 1 for the Seattle Seahawks in terms of targets and production.
I love it. I definitely think. I mean, the injury is like a little bit of a roadblock, but I really can see that. Like I think JSN is a really exciting prospect. Metcalf and Lockett are both good, but Lockett's getting older. Metcalf is maybe not one-dimensional by any means, but it's possible JSN just is better at the things that the Seahawks want to do. And I think he could finish strong. I've been taking him a ton in best ball. And I've been trying to get him in Dynasty. It's really hard to do, actually. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm really disappointed in my delivery again. You've made me think now about my hot take delivery, and I
wasn't gonna make you feel bad about it again, but it was.
Wow. Yeah, no. JSN is going to be the wide receiver. I gotta come. I'm gonna come prepared next time for that for sure. I'm gonna get in the mirror. I'm gonna hype myself up.
Yeah. We'll write it down. We'll do a hot take show again next year, and we're gonna double it. We're gonna do 6 takes. They're going to be incrementally hotter, and we're going to do the delivery is going to be perfect. It's going to be outstanding. Obviously, all these are going to hit, and then we'll be so famous from this show that everybody will listen to that show. I've got it all worked out. Billy, this has been a good time. I think it's time to wrap it up. I'm really glad that I did bring up Najee because that was we got a good little soundbite out of that.
Absolutely.
And I do love when you just die laughing on the other side of it. It is fun. So thanks for coming on again on a multiple of 7. We will see you again on episode 28. Until then, do you have any messages for the people?
No, I mean, other than check out dynastyfootballfactory.com. I'm working on an article looking at 300 plus rush attempt seasons in the following year after, like the effects essentially of a 300 yard or 300 attempt rushing season, which is bringing up some really fun and interesting results. Like if you look in the last 13 years, there's 31 of those seasons. If you look, back to 97 to 2010, which is, 13 years prior to that, there was 117. So just the amount, just the volume of those kind of players is down by like 75%. So there's just some interesting stuff in there in terms of the following year data. So that's going to be fun. Look out for that and everything else we do at Dynasty Football Factory, because we got awesome content.
Love that. Do me a favor, sort that sample of running back seasons by yards per carry and tell me if Najee Harris is at the bottom.
I have the link. I'll pull it up.
Absolutely go check out the site. We got a bunch of in-season articles for the year. Your start sits, your buys and sells, all that good stuff, and a lot of it from a dynasty lens, of course. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_DFF. You can follow Billy on Twitter at Willie Beaman DFF. Follow the show on Spotify if you don't mind, or Apple Podcasts. You could leave us a review. If you're watching on YouTube, you could subscribe. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers. That would be pretty cool if we could do that maybe during this NFL season. Otherwise, just sit tight and we'll be back next week.